In ancient Mesopotamia, the stars were viewed as conscious living deities. This celestial ruling class was believed to exert total authority over the weather, the rise of empires, and the individual destiny of every person living in Babylon and Ur. This diagram illustrates the concept of astrological determinism, effectively locking the population into paths dictated by the movement of the planets. It was the ultimate, unbreakable authority that governed every aspect of daily life. King Nimrod maintained his power through this belief system. When his astrologers prophesied a coming anomaly that threatened his throne, he ordered the systematic slaughter of 70,000 infants to eliminate the perceived threat. Amidst this purge, a woman named Matolai fled the city to save her newborn. She left the infant in a jagged limestone cave, wrapping him in a discarded garment and leaving him in the absolute darkness of the earth's interior. Abandoning a child in the Mesopotamian desert was a guaranteed death sentence. Between the extreme temperatures and prowling predators, the desert offered no path to survival for the helpless. The cave was a tomb of shadows, smelling of damp stone and mineral dust. Inside, the infant lay entirely alone, experiencing the first sharp pains of starvation. This darkness was suddenly pierced by a steady, warm luminance. Out of this light stepped the Archangel Gabriel. His name translates as God is my strength. And in this isolation, he provided the literal, physical strength the child required to survive. Gabriel placed a finger against the child's lips, providing a miraculous stream of nourishment. Over the next 20 days, the child underwent a supernatural maturation, his limbs lengthening and his mind expanding with an innate wisdom as he grew to the size of a youth. Within this hidden sanctuary, the standard progression of human development was suspended. The child emerged from the cave after less than a month, already walking and observing the world with a mature intellect. At 20 days old, the youth stepped into the desert at dusk. Above him, the violet sky, filled with the stars that his culture worshipped as the ultimate governors of fate. He stood motionless, testing the idea that these lights held absolute power. He watched them through the night, waiting to see if they possessed the independent authority his people claimed. As dawn approached, the stars began to fade, overwhelmed by the arrival of the morning light. Seeing them vanish into nothingness, he concluded that they could not be the supreme powers of the universe. He then turned his attention to the sun as it surged into the sky, casting intense heat across the sand. He tracked its path all through the day, only to watch it surrender to the western horizon and disappear. He observed the same pattern when the moon rose. This cyclical movement showed him that the sun, moon, and stars were all bound to a fixed schedule. They were not independent deities. They were prisoners to a path they did not choose. Through this process of elimination, he arrived at a new logical conclusion. Since the celestial bodies followed a strict mechanical order, there had to be a single unseen creator who set them all in motion. 20 days after her flight from Babylon, Metley returned to the cave. She expected to find only the remains of her child, taken by the elements or wild beasts. Instead, she found a tall, articulate young man standing at the edge of the valley. When he spoke, he revealed himself as the son she had left behind. Miraculously grown and standing before her, he told his mother that there is a living, ever-existing God in the heavens who cannot be seen, but whose glory fills the earth. He declared that this God held authority over all things, including King Nimrod. Terrified by this challenge to the state religion, Mtile told her husband Tara. As a prince in Nimrod's court, Tara was forced to confess the miracle and his son's claims to the king to protect his own household from execution. The youth's deduction, born in total isolation, had moved into the heart of the empire. His claim of an unseen creator stood as a direct, theological challenge to the very foundation of Nimrod's reign. Panic broke out in the royal palace. Nimrod realized that the prophesied child had survived and was now publicly proclaiming the existence of a higher power. Amidst the chaos, a new figure stepped from the shadows of the throne room. This was the adversary appearing as a sleek, manipulative advisor who integrated himself into the king's inner circle. He urged Nimrod to open the royal arsenal and dispatch a massive, heavily armed host into the desert. His counsel was to use the full weight of the military to capture the 20-day-old boy out in the wilderness. The youth felt the ground vibrate as thousands of soldiers approached, their spears glinting in the sun. He fell to his knees in the sand and sought deliverance from the God he had deduced was there to eliminate a single child. Nimrod had mobilized an entire army. The scale of the response demonstrated the king's desperation to silence a truth he could not control through his traditional astrological laws. In response to the prayer, the Archangel Gabriel was commanded to intervene. He descended to the desert floor as the army closed in on the boy's position. Gabriel swept his hand across the sand, and a massive wall of thick, dark clouds erupted from the desert floor. This barrier of absolute blackness stood between the youth and the advancing soldiers, plunging the army into a localized night. The sudden darkness broke the formation of the ranks. Believing they were facing a power they could not see or fight, the soldiers abandoned their weapons and fled back toward the city in terror. With the army gone, Gabriel lifted the youth onto his shoulder. They moved across the desert at a speed that defied the physical landscape, covering the distance to the capital. In moments, the youth appeared suddenly at the heavily guarded gates of Babylon. He stood before the seat of power and loudly proclaimed that the Eternal is the only God, and that Nimrod himself was subject to this creator. This image shows how the youth's deduction in the desert cave grew into a lasting legacy. By recognizing the creator through the observation of the physical world, he established a new way to understand the universe, a faith that would be recorded and passed down through the centuries.